Hello one and all, welcome to another video about the industry boogeyman, Chinese motorcycles. We've talked about them a lot in previous videos, specifically about the brand CF Moto, which is making waves with their affordable and pretty well-built motorcycles. Chinese-made motorcycles have seen plenty of hate online and actually quite a bit of praise. Whether you like it or not, they're not going anywhere. As we've talked about before, global motorcycle manufacturing is complicated, and there are plenty of established brands that are already in partnership with companies like CF Moto or QJ Motors. I don't foresee a world where Chinese motorcycles begin to overtake Japanese or European companies, but they are ushering in a paradigm shift for incredibly affordable and functional motorcycles that will force higher-end companies to strategize on how to stay competitive in the cost-conscious market. We've spoken plenty about CF Moto before, so I imagine most viewers are familiar with them. If not, you can go back and look at the videos we've done in the recent months. While you're at it, watch our video, Your Motorcycle Wasn't Made Where You Think It Was, to help establish context. But today, we're talking about the Chinese motorcycle manufacturers you've never heard of. Today's video is proudly sponsored by a community over at yamanoob.co. If you like what we do here on the channel, the easiest way to support is by heading over to yamanoob.co and signing up for a membership. Membership perks include access to our Discord server, exclusive behind-the-scenes and live-stream content like the weekly Yamcast and the new YNGP podcast, and the discounts on gear over at shop.yamanoob.co. We also give you discounts on rentals over at Twisted Road. Best of all, every membership earns automatic entries to win our fantastic giveaway motorcycles. We've given away dozens of motorcycles in the last few years. It's crazy to think about, but it's one of the coolest things we do. Expert bikes, beginner bikes, and everything in between. If you'd like to support our channel and earn some of these perks, head over to yamanoob.co and sign up. Now let's get started with the video. If I learned anything from my research for this video, is that Europeans seem much less afraid of purchasing Chinese manufactured motorcycles. There are so many brands that are headquartered in Europe and outsource their productions or just completely rebrand Chinese built motorcycles. Like so many, it was hard to choose which ones I wanted to talk about because they all started to look the same. So many websites are full of small 125cc neo-retro scrambler bikes that autoplay videos of half-nude tattoo Anglo-Saxon motorcyclists riding dirty scramblers in the European countryside. But anyway, Chinese manufacturing seems to be far more common or acceptable normality. Potentially because for many riders in the EU, motorcycles are a cheap and easy way to get around and not part of their identity like the thinly veiled American motorcyclist who need everyone to know which brand they ride or die for. Anyway, the first Chinese motorcycle manufacturers I'd like to talk about is QJ Motors. It is important to talk about them at the top because not only are they China's largest producer of two-wheeled machines, they are likely to provide a lot of the bikes that are rebranded and slightly tweaked for sale in other countries. QJ is probably the worst offender for casually ripping off most of their designs in a pretty blatant way. I mean, look across their entire lineup of motorcycles and scooters. They have 30 unique bikes that all look quite similar to motorcycles made by other manufacturers. And sure, it's capitalism, baby. QJ wants a little piece of the pie, but we're not talking like Coke and Pepsi. We're talking like Coke and Coke, the second being spelled K-O-K-E. QJ has made motorcycles and scooters since 1985, but became prominent manufacturer of large displacement motorcycles in China after they purchased Benelli in 2005. One of their flagship sport naked bikes is the SRK 700, a 693cc parallel twin engine that has the exact same bore and stroke as the P-Twin and the CF Moto 700 naked bike. That in of itself is already interesting, but then you scroll down the product page for the SRK 700, you'll see that the wheels are highlighted in the features section. It reads, and I quote, "Front wheel, pretty good. Rear wheel, nice." It's instances like that that are evidence of the disconnect that I find so troublesome. It's like when you use CF Moto's navigation feature, it gives you directions in inches, as in your turn is coming up in 60,000 inches. Not a very useful metric. Maybe it is a metric system mistranslation, but it's hard not to laugh at that. QJ has all these semi-secret deals with brands like Harley-Davidson and MV Agusta among their existing private label bikes. QJ has sold motorcycles globally under the names QJ Motor, Benelli, and QJang. While mostly being sold in Asian markets, QJ branded motorcycles are now sold in Europe as well. I hacked into the Spanish QJ website and the MSRP for an SRK 700 is 7,300 euros. If Google hasn't failed me, that is a little over $7,100, which seems kind of expensive to me when an MT-07 costs $7,900. I don't know, QJ Motors is weird. They're definitely the most troublesome Chinese manufacturer, in my opinion. Alright, now that we've got the big one out of the way, let's talk about some of the smaller Chinese motorcycle companies, Lexmoto. Lexmoto is another recognized brand in Europe that is headquartered in the UK while doing all production manufacturing in China. Or if I understand correctly, mostly rebadging existing Chinese motorcycles for sale in the UK. They cater to riders operating in the EU by tailoring all of their motorcycles to fit within the different stages of the A1 and A2 licensing system. Most of their motorcycles fall into the A1 category, capped at 125 cc's, although they offer a handful of larger 500cc motorcycles. Because these bikes are catered specifically to newer riders that want a cheap get-around-town motorcycle that's power output is legally restricted anyways, there seems to be more of a focus on different style options than performance features. There's a 125cc naked bike called the Iska, a scrambler style called the Tempest, and a sport bike called the LXR. Oh, not to mention the interesting cruiser models that are all named the Detroit and Michigan. It's as if they wanted to name these Sportster-inspired cruisers the Milwaukee and Wisconsin, but they thought that'd be a little too on the nose. All these 125cc motorcycles range between 2,000 and 3,800 pounds, which is around $2,200 to $4,200 for our curious American listeners. One of the largest bikes made by Lexmoto is sold as the Vogi 650 DSX, an adventure bike powered by a single-cylinder 652cc BMW clone engine. You might be wondering how Lexmoto got their hands on that design. Well, fun fact, some BMW engines are made in China. In regards to this model, it is a clone of the engine for the G650GS. The 650 DSX has some higher-end components like Nissan brakes, Pirelli tires, and all the tech features that every ADV bike is required to come with. All for 6,400 pounds, or just a little over $7,000. Now that is quite cheaper than a similar ADV like a Tenere 700. Bikes from Lexmoto appear to have mixed reviews. For riders who just want a super cheap transportation, they don't seem to have all that many qualms, but serious riders seem to have come to the same conclusion that most American riders have. It is worth it to pony up the extra cash for a motorcycle from the big four for reliability, parts availability, character, and resale value. Similar to Lexmoto, another UK Chinese-produced motorcycle company is Sinus. They've been selling bikes since 2005. They claim to design their motorcycles in Brighton and manufacture them in China, but like most of these companies, it's hard to tell the difference between a rebranded Chinese bike with a few bolt-ons or a quote unoriginal design that is just a clone of bikes and engines from established brands. While these bikes are understandably plagued with many of the issues that face Chinese motorcycles, the bikes from Sinus at least look the most fun. They have a 125cc supermoto and a bizarre-looking Grom thing called the Akuma that has a weird triple exhaust pipe like an MV Agusta. Sinus also sells the world's smallest ADV bike called the Terrain, and of course, a generic rip-off cruiser like every Chinese motorcycle company makes and or rebrands. My instincts are to be overly critical and admit that I'm tired of these small, disingenuous clone motorcycles that exist solely to make shady, multinational conglomerates oodles of cash, but apparently, people like them, and they serve some sort of purpose. There are a few dozen Sinus dealerships in the UK, so they must be selling bikes, or they're just fronts for some sort of shadowy entity. If you're in the UK and want a cheap motorcycle that might break under normal use, maybe check out a Sinus. I'm going to lump the next three companies together because although they are so indistinguishable, I'm getting mixed up trying to write about them. They are Herald, Mutt, and Blue Rock, formerly Bullet Motorcycles. And no, that has nothing to do with Ruroc helmets, although that would be hilarious. Each company is based in Europe but sells Chinese-made bikes. They rely heavily on the neo-retro hipster branding. Here is a snippet from the Blue Rock Motorcycles website. I quote, "We're the crazy kids with a deep love for everything old school and classy that want to keep having fun and playing around. Blue Rock is not just another motorcycle brand." I can't say Blue Rock without laughing, guys. I'm going off script here, but it's just a funny name. "It's a way of life." End quote. And if that doesn't make you feel a little queasy, the video that automatically plays will. Blue Rock sells 125cc Scrambler and cafe bikes and unironically flex that they use Suzuki engine clones, the same clones that every other Chinese manufacturer probably uses for their 125cc bikes. They then sell larger 250cc Scramblers and the V-Bob, a V-twin cruiser. Just the thought of the Blue Rock V-Bob, it sounds like some alternate dimension Sportster. It's the most hilarious thing. These bikes are probably the best looking of these three, and they did a little bit more than just put their logo on the bike showed up at the warehouse. Mutt Motorcycles is a lifestyle brand that sells Scramblers. They have a bunch of different Scramblers, models like the Mongrel, the Razorback, and the Mastiff. These names, my god. Each comes in a 125cc or 250cc size. It's not uncommon to see them in parts of London, but there are not really any reputable reviews online. There are rumors that much of the information is suppressed by the company. Sounds conspiratorial to me, but it also wouldn't be surprising. Do you know what else is conspiratorial? The illusion of choice. The fact that all these companies make pretty poor quality small bikes aimed at young and inexperienced riders because they are restricted in what they are able to ride. People are like, yeah, they suck, but I bought one anyways because I have a 125 for 2 years and I know I'm going to get rid of it anyway after that. It's like giving companies a free pass to make crap bikes because the customers are less concerned with the longevity when they know their time with it will be temporary. I don't know, maybe I've spent too much time in the dark nether regions of the Chinese motorcycle black market. I almost forgot, there's Herald Motorcycle Company. They're also cheap, rebranded Chinese bikes using cloned parts aimed at hipsters, although they have a larger bike, the Brute 500, which is claimed to be designed, engineered, and built in the UK. Take that with a grain of salt. The last company I'd like to talk about today is one that we can actually get here in America other than CF Moto, is Bushan. Bushan is a Chinese motorcycle manufacturer that makes small bikes and scooters and stuff, but in America, they sell the Braz Dual Sport and the Moto Max 250 Supermoto. These bikes are sold out of a dealership in Georgia and shipped right to your house in a box. They seem to be a step above the Chinese dirt bikes from Amazon, but they're still mail-ordered Chinese motorcycles, so you have to keep your expectations within check. The Braz Recon, and the Moto Max are all dual sport bikes with 229cc single-cylinder engines. They're all carbureted and make like 15 horsepower. The Braz has a 1719 wheel setup, the Recon has an 1821, and the Max has the 1717 for the Sumo setup. The customer's consensus is they're not as terrible as you'd expect for a $2,000 dual sport. They work fine, although typically need a bit more upkeep than their Japanese counterparts. That about wraps up my little exploration of Chinese motorcycles. What do you guys think? Do any of my A1 Euro boys rip around on these Chinese scramblers? I'd love to know what these bikes are like in the real world test, so let me know your experience down below because we can't get them here in America. As always, thanks for watching the video. If you like what we do here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support our efforts and gain some cool perks, head over to yamanoob.co and learn more about our memberships. Fact: all the characters' eyes on cereal boxes look downward in order to make eye contact with children from the grocery store. That's creepy. Goodbye. Well, look at you. You've made it to the end of another Yami Noob video. You should consider yourself pretty lucky because I have curated this one right over here for you to continue watching. It's probably just as good as the one you just saw. Unless you hated the one you just saw. I don't know, maybe leave me a comment down below about how much you hated it as well too. Or just keep watching this one. Make sure you keep watching Yami Noob. Don't forget to keep watching Yami Noob. That's the most important thing. Keep watching Yami Noob.